Hi, welcome to the Spiritual Connection Show. I'm your host, Katie Augustyn. So I'm a transformation coach, I'm an energy healer, I'm a shamanic practitioner, and I'm the spiritual head of the Transformation Center CT, which is located in Westport, Connecticut. So at the center, we do a variety of things. We have workshops, we have trainings, we have retreats, and also once a month we have satsang, which is Sanskrit for in the company of the truth. And that's an opportunity to just spend time with yourself, and we do some meditation, some chanting, just a very low key, it's really just about an hour. And we do that on Wednesday evenings, generally the last or the fourth or third Wednesday of each month. So you're welcome to come anytime for that. We've also recently started a shamanic clinic that we host monthly, and that is the second Tuesday of each month. And it's an opportunity to learn what shamanism is, and you can just make a reservation for a little half-hour slot, so you actually can get a healing as an introduction to that modality. And we just started also a shamanic drumming and journeying event, where this is a little different, where you're going to participate whether you have a drum or not. You're going to learn to journey and learn more about shamanism. So we'd love to see you at any of these events. And everyone is welcome to the Transformation Center, especially if you're just beginning your spiritual journey. We'd love to meet you. So the Spiritual Connection Show is all about connection. It's about connecting with each other, as well as connecting more fully with our own spiritual selves. And as you know, I have a different guest each week, and you will get to hear about their spiritual journey, and therefore maybe learn something for you, something about yourself. So I'm happy that you're joining us tonight. Thanks for being here. So my guest tonight is Joe Augustyn. Welcome to the show,
thank you.
Joe. I'm so happy you're here.
I'm glad you invited me to your program.
Yeah, this is great. So Joe is actually my brother-in-law, full disclosure. I'm married to his brother. I call Robert. Everybody in the family calls him Bob. And so we've been married for, about 33 years, I think. So I've probably known Joe for about 35.
Yep.
Yeah, so, and he lives up in a different part of the state, so he made the journey down for this. So thanks for being here, Joe.
Well, thank you.
So he's going to tell us a little bit about his spiritual journey, and also about something that he did recently, the Camino de Santiago.
Correct.
So we're going to learn about that as well.
Right.
So why don't we start with you telling us about your spiritual journey thus far, either a little bit, whatever you want to share, how you got started,
Sure.
Anything about it.
Okay. Well, I guess I was raised in a Catholic family, where my parents made sure we got to Mass every Sunday, and they also attended church too. I went to parochial school from kindergarten through 8th grade, was an altar server, so I really practiced my faith. I met my future wife, Joanne, at the University of Connecticut, and she came from a similar background. So I think we were both on the same page in terms of practicing our Catholicism.
Yeah, so she came from a big Catholic family as well.
Yes, she did.
So that
Yes,
worked out great.
Yep.
And you've been married for how long now?
Next year will be 50 years.
Oh my gosh. Congratulations
Yes, well,
in advance.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you have 3 lovely children, so that's
Yes,
great
we do.
too.
Yes,
and
we
some
do.
grandchildren.
3 grandchildren also. Yes.
Yeah, hopefully we'll see some of them over the holidays. I don't know,
Yeah.
but that's great. So tell us about how your faith kind of progressed. Anything that you want to share about
Sure.
that?
We got married in 1970, and then shortly after getting married, we moved to Florida. And then in the mid-70s, we had an opportunity to attend what's called a Cursillo Weekend. That's spelled C-U-R-S-I-L-L-O. It's a Spanish word meaning short course. In this case, it's a short course in Christianity. And it starts off with a 3-day weekend that I participated with. And in the weekend itself, you had both lay speakers and clergy. And the purpose of it was to make your Christian faith, Catholic faith, a part of your everyday life. How do you effectively do that? And that was really changing for us. What you saw on the weekend, you laughed, you cried, you saw people that had something that you really wanted to have be a part of yourself also.
Huh.
So
would you describe that as a faith that you wanted to be part of, or was it a self-awareness?
I think it was just like a contentment that people had.
I
see. And you wouldn't expect going on a weekend like this and say laughing on things, and it just you just feel very comfortable there.
So you really connected with the other participants?
You absolutely did, because what you ended up doing, you had the talks and then you would discuss it. And then a lot of the people that you met there, I mean, some of them became our lifelong friends that we, and then this was quite a while ago, so this was since the mid-'70s.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So how would you say that progressed you on your journey, or how did it change your life?
It really, there aren't many things in life that you could honestly say is a life changer. Getting married certainly is, but this was a life changer for us. Right after it, for instance, I ended up going to daily mass for probably 5 or 6 years before work. We had a local monastery, and it was something that I wanted to do and did to start off my day. But the real change for us was in our parish, the church we belonged to. I'd say prior to this, we were probably like Sunday-only Catholics. We'd go to mass, but we became fully engaged in our parish. A lot of our social, volunteer. I mean, we were Eucharistic ministers. I was president of the men's club. We took some elderly people to church. Joanne and I, we also were on this Lord Place food van where we brought food to needy people. So we got fully involved, and it was wonderful.
It sounds like it. So it was very fulfilling.
Very fulfilling. And then we got to know a broader group of people. These weekends where people spoke, Joanne and I worked on several, and so some of those talks we ended up giving, and so we got to know a lot of people, not only in our parish, but through all of Palm Beach County, of all walks of life, and it's this community was just, it was just huge, and just being a part of that was, like I say, it was truly life-changing. And like I say, a lot of those people are good friends today that are like family to us, even though we've been back up here 20 years.
Yeah, so you were in Florida for
30 years
and back in Connecticut for 20 years now.
Yep.
Time flies. Well, that's an amazing way to build a community and be part of something that's bigger than you are.
It really is. It really is.
So you've kept it going a little bit since you've been back?
Yes, we have, and mostly in connection down there. I mean, we just switched parishes, but up here, the parish we were in had somewhat of that community, so we were able to continue it. Like I say, right now we're in a little bit of a transition. But one thing the Cursillo has, this Cursillo method, is they encourage you to meet weekly in groups of, say, 4 to 8 people. And actually the group that I met with started in 1976, okay? It is ongoing today. So when I go back down to Florida, we winter down there, if it's Saturday morning at 7 o'clock, I know the restaurant I sit in like I haven't skipped a beat.
Fell right back in.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And what you do is you discuss some things, maybe spiritually during the week that's possibly happened, again, to keep your focus on this. And one of the things interesting they always ask is, at what moment during the week did you feel closest to Christ? Okay? And that could be something in some reading you did that maybe triggered something, some beauty of nature that maybe reminded you of God's power or something like that. Or it could be something personally, or maybe yourself asking me to be on your program and gave me that kind of moment. But it would be something like that.
Yeah, that's great. It's just a way to keep it forefront in your life.
That is exactly what it is.
Yeah, and have that really strong connection to yourself. So do you feel that that God is part of us as well, like in your heart?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think between that and and maybe what you see in the Bible and various things. Absolutely.
Yeah. So speaking of that, the Bible has been a very important part of your life, hasn't it?
Yes, it has.
Yeah.
I tried years ago to, get into reading the Bible, and I just couldn't quite get there. I try to read it like a book, where you start at the beginning and you read through.
Is that because you're an engineer?
Yeah, it is, and because you jump around, it has to make sense to me. And I would get bogged down in the Old Testament, and I just could not get there. And I finally found a version somebody recommended. It was called the Catholic One-Year Bible. And what it does is it divides the Bible up into 365 sections. So that's one section for every day of the year. Okay. And each section is about 3 pages. Well, each day on each page, you're going to have something from the Old Testament, the New Testament, Psalm, and Proverb. So
they just reorganize it.
So they reorganized it, and they just did it in the order.
In a way that makes sense.
And it does make sense, because they all come at you with something a little different. The Old Testament with the prophets, and you have the Gospels, and then the Psalms, which are kind of like prayers, and the Proverbs are just practical stuff for everyday living, and it just all seemed to make sense, and it seems to speak to you. Seems to speak to me.
It did. So that's great.
And
so you did that for a year, or do you continue to do it now?
I'm my 4th time through it. I'll read something. It usually takes me maybe a year and a half to do it, because I don't
do it every day.
Don't do it every day where I'm on vacation or something like that. But I'm the 4th time through, and you keep finding more, and it's very calming. You kind of realize that you're not in control of everything. You don't have to control things. That God is there. Do all that. We have our little part to do, and it takes a lot of stress out of my life.
Certainly does. That's awesome. That's a wonderful reminder. And
it is
to access that you don't have to control everything. In fact, we can't.
It's big.
Even if we wanted to, we can't.
No, that's very big.
So that's great. Well, I really want to hear about this Camino de Santiago. I've heard a little bit about it.
Okay.
But why don't we switch gears a little bit? And,
Sure.
And I want to ask you some questions about that, because I know you did this recently.
Yes.
And so can you say, well, first of all, what is the Camino de Santiago?
Well, another Spanish word I'm going to throw at you. It's the Camino is a Spanish word for road or path, and Camino de Santiago is the road or path to Santiago in Spain.
Which is a town.
Okay. And on the northwest part of Spain. Now, it's also called the Walk of St. James. St. James was an apostle of Christ that was beheaded in 44 AD, and he's buried at the cathedral in Santiago. And probably the reason why is tradition has it that he was the first person to introduce Spain to Christianity.
Okay.
Now, what this walk is, the main part of the walk is called the French Way, and it starts in France, goes over the Pyrenees Mountains, and ends up in Santiago. Now, that is 500 miles. That's a 6 or 7 week trek.
Right.
And a lot of people have made it, but not here. There's also a lot of branches that tie in. And what we ended up to get recognition of completing the Camino, you have to do at least 100 kilometers, or about 70 miles. And that's what I did with my brother Bob or Robert and John. And we took, so this was the final 70
the
miles.
Last segment of it.
The last segment miles where almost everybody was coming through. And we
wow.
took 6 days of walking about 12 miles a day to do this.
Wow, what an experience.
It really was.
Yeah, so how many people typically do this?
Well, that is the interesting part, which
Yeah.
you probably wouldn't realize. We did it in May of 2018. And in 2018, 327,000 people walked the Camino.
That's amazing.
So that's like 1,000 people a day.
Wow.
And of those, only about 7,000 were Americans. So 2 or 3% were Americans. Now, there was a movie about 8-10 years ago called The Way, starring Martin Sheen, that helped it a little bit. It was filmed on the Camino, and the Camino played a central role in the movie. So if you haven't seen the movie, that's a good one to introduce you to the Camino, and that's something else that certainly got my interest in that.
Well, yeah, so that was really, I was curious about, so why did you want to do this in the first place, other than seeing the movie?
Well, you know, 5 years ago, I never heard of Camino de Santiago, which is kind of typical, I think, of people in this country. And then we got a Christmas letter from a good friend of ours in Florida who said he walked this Camino with people he served with in Vietnam. We did it together, and they did the full 500 miles. And he said it was a physically taxing, motivating, bonding experience for all of them.
Okay.
And it's just, you know, I was fascinated by that.
Yeah. So that motivated you even more to want to do it.
It did, and you know, and then I did see the movie after that. That did a little more, and then there was a deacon in our church that I met. This is in Florida, and he was saying he was a few years older than I am. He was not in good physical condition, so he said he took 2 years from barely walking a mile to you know, get up to speed to walk, and he walked the 500 miles with his son-in-law.
That's amazing.
And he actually wrote a book on it, and he gave me the book to read. I read that, and then
so that was another inspiration.
Another inspiration, and then you know, trying to convince my two brothers. You know, after we've had some medical issues in the past, we said, you know what, maybe God is speaking to us to let's walk the Camino. So we got them.
Well, good for you.
We all agreed to do it, and we ended up doing it.
It was a wonderful experience.
Yep, it certainly
Would you want to do it again?
Yes.
Because you know, I would love to do it, and I had heard a little bit about it before y'all went, but not enough to know much.
Yep.
But then, of course, no one else was invited on this trip because it was a brothers bonding experience, and I get that. But we can all go back, you know.
Absolutely,
we could all do it together.
Definitely, yes.
Yeah.
Definitely, yes.
So what would you say was a highlight of the trip, or any people you met that stood out to you?
You know, it's very interesting. 1,000 people, you are seeing people ahead of you and behind you.
Is it like bumper to bumper?
Well, you see some ahead, and you know, not quite bumper to bumper, but quite a bit. Matter of fact, I'll have to tell you a funny story. The one time, you know, we were walking, we must have been engrossed in something quite a bit, and we walked about a half hour. I says, Bob, I haven't seen anybody in a half hour. So
that's not a good sign.
So we look around, not a good sign. And the typical guys, you know, do we all agree? And I says, let's turn around and go back. And my brother John says, no, let's keep walking. And then your husband was a smart guy. He says, let's look at the GPS. And we says, you know what? We are nowhere near the Camino.
That's hilarious.
So we ended up going back. But anyway, I digress a little bit there. Yeah. But one thing on the Camino, what you do is with all the people, you greet each other when you see them with Buen Camino, good Camino. And then what you end up doing is, you know, striking up a conversation with them. And then maybe you walk with them a while and talk, and then you know, talk about each other's lives a little bit. And then you may see them the following day, or maybe when you stop for, because there's plenty of places to stop for a break, you know, to have something to eat. And so you do feel
like everybody's connected, and it's like one big,
very connected
kind of
family.
Experience.
You really do. You know,
seems like it.
It's not like when you go on a tour where you're observing things. You are a part of this, and you really feel a part of this pretty much right away.
Because you're exexperiencing it.
And
everyone's experiencing it differently, yet similarly.
Exactly. You're exactly right.
Yeah, that's
because
awesome.
You know, there are some people, to your point, there's some people on it that are very religious, and there are these churches and chapels along the way. You know, you say a prayer, light a candle, and there's some signs with some sayings and things like that. And yet there are others that are doing this totally as a secular experience.
Okay.
I think most of us, it's something in between,
Something
to be honest.
That's interesting. Well, I understand that you brought back some photos, and we'd like to show our audience some of the photos that you brought back.
I'd be happy to.
Okay, so they're going to be on the screen in a second, and maybe just take a little bit and just describe each one or the highlight of it. We have about 10 minutes left, so we have time.
Okay,
that
would be great.
Okay.
Okay, the first photo is actually the three of us: my brother John, Katie's husband Bob or Robert, and myself. And this gives you an idea of, I mean, the scenery there in the country. It's just very rural, wide open, and it just is beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And one thing I just want to point out is we were just getting started, and we started in the town of Saria. And keep in mind, some people that walk in the 500 miles or whatever, I mean, they're done. And you see these, I mean, they're, they're getting to the homeward stretch.
They're almost there.
And we're nice and relaxed. And
you're fresh and haven't even...
and we see these people sometimes walking in, and we go, I wonder how we're going to do. And the other thing is, neither of us have walked ever 5 miles. Can we walk 12 miles? So we were anxious to test ourselves a little bit.
So this is at the very beginning.
So this is at the very beginning. We look pretty relaxed over here.
I thought maybe that was when you got lost because there's nobody around. All right.
Okay.
So what else? The next picture?
Now, this is typical. There's a chapel along the way. That little thing Bob is by, it holds corn. I'm not sure exactly what they do. They store it. But these buildings are probably 700, 800 years old. And that is a chapel in there, and you see several of these along the way. And then you see some houses that are this old that people are actually living in. So, I mean, it's just so very different from what we have in this country. It's like you're in another century.
Yeah, Europe is, everything
it
is
really is.
Old.
So,
Cool.
I mean, that is what you see along the way.
Nice. All right.
Another thing is, you don't see this in this country. We're walking the path. You can see some people walking. They're also called pilgrims ahead of us. And some farmers there are moving his cows along the path. So you never know what you run into here. Again, it's like from another era that you see.
So are there automobiles on the same trail? So
no,
this is only for walking or animals?
Yeah, the path is usually paved or unpaved. Now, when you go through the towns, you will go through some towns, but there's small towns and villages. So it will go on a street. But you follow a symbol. I'll show you this later on.
Okay.
It's of a scallop shell with an arrow, and that basically is your path.
All right. So I guess here's another photo.
Now, so we
probably should move on a little bit.
Yeah, what this is a typical town. Now, we were a little tired here this day. Maybe we walked 15 miles. So, I mean, it is quite a bit to walk. So when you get into town, you're just, I'm finally here.
Take a little break.
Take a break, and then we would, really check out the town. There's usually a church there, and so. Okay,
nice. Is that this one?
Now, this is very interesting. This was about a quarter mile from the Camino, and that is a village of the Roman era that was recently unearthed. That is about 2,000 years old. So think of it, Katie, when people lived and worked there, Christ was walking the earth right in that place right there. Yeah, and that was just something to think about.
Cool. Nice.
And finally, we arrived at the cathedral.
Yay, look at you guys.
And it is magnificent. It's over 800 years old, and it's, after all the anticipation of walking, we're finally there.
Well, congratulations. That's fantastic.
It is. Yeah. It's it really it is exciting.
So what would you say was the main, like, a spiritual impact on you from the whole experience?
I think for me personally, number one, it was the bonding with all the people that did it. I mean, there's 1,000 people the time we were walking, and they're from 200 different countries, so all kinds of cultures. And, you felt immediately bonded with the people there. and you really felt that God or higher power was guiding us along on this mission. You know, you were part of something bigger. And then we gave energy to each other.
Yeah.
We really did, in all respects. I mean, building each other up, talking, building each other up as we walked, you know, just being friendly and really enjoying each other's company. So I would say that's number one. The other thing is bonding with my two brothers. And, you know, we walked 6 days and we talked about everything. We had an agreement, no politics, so that was good. And, you know, so that got us a lot closer, and we've really been closer since. So that's, we took home with us. And I would say the last thing is for myself personally, I've been much better able to enjoy the moment and to take the moment. I'm an engineer. I like to plan things out a certain way, and that doesn't a lot of times sit well, if you know what I mean, with, you know, you may miss some things that go by, but the Camino has like a rhythm and a routine, and you're just enjoying every moment of it. You know, whether talking to a person or seeing something. And that's another thing that I think I've taken back with me a little bit and has helped me spiritually too.
That's wonderful. So just being present in the moment.
Just being present.
Fully present.
And loving whatever you do. I mean, it could be, you know, whatever it is. I mean, speaking with you here, reading something.
That's great. Well, I know you brought some items, so do you want to just describe a little bit about what you brought?
Okay, just a couple things.
A little bit of show and tell.
A little show and tell.
You can see them.
You know, online you could get all kinds of books and information, and this is one that I took with me, and everything, you know, we wanted to know as far as you know, our particular trip. So anything as far as sites to see, the kind of do's and don'ts, or what towns to stay at, and
so
things
there's
like
a lot
that.
available.
A lot available.
Okay.
This next one is very interesting. It's called the Pilgrim Passport.
Oh.
Now, if you notice, there's a lot of stamps here. And, well, the Camino is even though it's spiritual, it's trust but verify. So twice a day, whether you're at a business, it could be at a church, at a restaurant, at a store, they will stamp that you've been there in that town and date it.
Oh, wow.
So
they really keep track
so
to make sure when you get at the end that you've been to all these places.
That you've been to all these places, and you wonder, okay, so what are you going to do with this?
Yeah, then what do you get?
And then what you get is really this nice
beautiful certificate.
Artwork that somebody personally, you know, does for you to verify that you've completed the Camino. Now I could put it on my resume as a thing.
That's wonderful.
And I just want to show you one more thing. This is
we need to wrap it up. So just
this is what you have on your backpack. So this is the symbol, the scallop shell.
Oh, you put it on your backpack. Okay.
And one reason maybe they use this is, you know, the roads of the Camino come to Santiago.
What a great metaphor.
Okay.
Cool. That's great, Joe. Well, I really appreciate your doing this. Is there any final thought you want to leave with us? Because we have about half a minute.
Sure. I just want to say, you know, as far as my spiritual journey, I just feel very grateful. I feel grateful for my life. I feel grateful for my faith. And I also feel that I have really been blessed. Been blessed with my parents, wife Joanne, my 3 children, 3 grandchildren, siblings, spouses, friends that help. They really, whether knowingly or unknowingly, have helped form me. And, you know, I'm just very grateful for that.
Yeah, well, we're grateful for you, and thank you for being here. You're clearly just a wonderful addition to the planet, and we're really glad you're here.
Oh, thank you very much, Katie.
Thank you. Love you.
Love you.
Okay. And thank you to our audience for being here tonight. I hope you enjoyed meeting my brother-in-law, Joe Augustyn, and hearing all about the Camino. And I'm your host, Katie Augustyn, signing off. Thank you and blessings. Good night.